The problem today with a lot of guys is all they can do is just fancy shit, but they don't have any fundamentals.
I think kayfabe died for sure.
The Undertaker recently admitted that kayfabe is dead. Ric Flair believes that today's wrestlers can't compare to the legends of the past. And Bret Hart? He went straight to WWE's Intercontinental Champion and called his wrestling style completely unprofessional. But that's only the surface of what these icons truly feel about modern wrestling. Bret the Hitman Hart, a 5-time WWF champion and one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time, has become one of the sport's harshest critics. Inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2006 for his solo career, and again in 2019 with the Hart Foundation, Hart's opinions have only grown stronger over the years. His criticism comes from one core belief: real pro wrestling should always feel real. This lesson, learned in the legendary dungeon run by his father Stu Hart, shapes everything he says. The fake presentation of modern wrestling frustrates him deeply. When he attended WWE's Clash at the Castle event in Cardiff, Wales in September 2022, he said he was embarrassed watching the crowd copy the wrestlers' leg slaps during matches, calling the whole show a big giant charade where everyone is in on it. He compared that to a simple training match featuring Zoe Sager, praising her genuine headlock as more authentic than anything seen at the grand WWE spectacle. Hart's issue with leg slapping the sound effect wrestlers make by hitting their thigh during strikes sums up everything he feels is wrong today. In a 2023 interview with HN Live, he even called modern wrestling pathetic from top to bottom, criticizing both WWE and AEW. To Hart, this isn't just a small complaint, it's a complete betrayal of what wrestling is supposed to be. To Bret Hart, the problem runs deeper than fake sound effects. It's a sign that wrestling has turned into performance instead of the immersive art it once was. His biggest concern now is wrestlers hurting each other for real without any storytelling purpose, especially through hard chops that leave bruises and welts. This issue reached its peak in 2025 when Hart came face-to-face with WWE Intercontinental Champion Gunther. According to reports from August 2025, Hart told Gunther directly that his trademark chops were nothing but bullshit and lazy wrestling, because they cause real pain without adding to the story. Hart's philosophy is simple. If you're genuinely hurting someone in the ring, you're being unprofessional. It's a classic clash between generations. Gunther's hard-hitting European style is praised by fans for its intensity and realism, but to Hart, it's just two men actually hurting each other, something completely opposite to the art form he perfected. Back in his day, Hart only allowed Ric Flair to throw one chop per match and had no respect for anyone who intentionally caused pain. The irony, of course, is that Hart's own career ended due to a concussion caused by Bill Goldberg in 1999, which makes him even more vocal about unnecessary harm. Goldberg remains his prime example of dangerous wrestling. Hart also criticizes the modern over-rehearsed style, saying it makes matches look fake and choreographed. Speaking to Fox Sports Australia in 2024, he mocked the group spots where wrestlers dive onto crowds of others waiting to catch them, asking bluntly, "Who wants to watch that?" These overly choreographed spots, according to Bret Hart, completely destroy the audience's suspension of disbelief. He believes that most modern wrestlers have forgotten the true art of storytelling and the importance of basic holds like the headlock, turning matches into nothing more than athletic showcases. In a 2023 TalkSport interview, Hart expressed disappointment with the lack of emotion and drama at WrestleMania, saying, "Today's wrestlers don't know how to tell a story despite their incredible athleticism." His harshest words, however, are directed at AEW. During an appearance on the Ariel Helwani show in April 2025, Hart said the promotion was filled with mostly actors pretending to be wrestlers, urging them to stop overacting and focus on real wrestling. He misses the raw edge and authenticity of old-school performers like Kurt Hennig and Dynamite Kid. Still, Hart does recognize some bright spots in today's industry. He's praised Roman Reigns for bringing realism and credibility back to the main event scene, and commended Rhea Ripley for consistently making her matches feel authentic. He's also pointed to British wrestlers like Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate as proof that genuine storytelling could be making a comeback. Hart believes wrestling moves in cycles, and that fans will eventually grow tired of the overly scripted, flashy style. His hope is that the business will return to its roots, realism without real pain, psychology over stunts, and storytelling powerful enough to make the audience forget they're watching something predetermined. When The Undertaker talks about the death of kayfabe, it carries unmatched weight. The dead man, inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2022, protected his mysterious persona for more than 3 decades, rarely breaking character, even outside the ring. Through his podcast 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway, launched in 2023, The Undertaker has become strikingly open about what he sees as the major flaws in modern wrestling. His biggest concern is the industry's over-reliance on athleticism at the cost of real storytelling. In October 2024, he described today's wrestling as 2 different worlds, calling excessive athleticism a curse that overshadows what wrestling is supposed to be. The flips, moonsaults, and 450 splashes may look impressive, but to him, they've turned matches into video game-style spectacles that make wrestlers forget the art's true purpose. As The Undertaker explains, wrestling isn't about how many moves you can perform, it's about telling a story. When performers focus too much on flashy stunts instead of substance, the crowd might cheer in the moment, but the matches end up being forgettable. He's also issued serious warnings about the physical toll this modern style takes, saying wrestlers who depend on constant high-flying maneuvers will inevitably burn out or get injured. Sadly, his words have proven true, as several younger wrestlers have already been forced into early retirement due to the physical demands of this approach. The human body wasn't built for nightly 450 splashes and suicide dives through tables, he cautioned. Yet perhaps his strongest criticism targets how modern wrestlers use social media and treat kayfabe. In November 2024, he called out the disconnect created when performers break character online, saying it undermines their in-ring work. Even with his supernatural persona, The Undertaker always made sure everything he did made sense because the details mattered, and their absence in today's product troubles him deeply. In February 2024, he also lamented how calm and casual the backstage environment has become, comparing it to the fiery intensity of his own era, when competition and pride defined every locker room. The Undertaker believes modern wrestlers have lost the pride and grit that once defined the business, spending more time playing video games than developing tough, believable personas that create compelling television. Still, he's not entirely critical. In February 2025, he praised Gunther for his classic disciplined approach, acknowledging that while the wrestling business is thriving financially, its current style may not be sustainable in the long run. His concerns come from a place of deep love and respect for the industry he helped build over 3 decades, where he mastered fundamentals like storytelling, psychology, and protecting kayfabe to make people truly believe. Seeing these principles fade troubles him, not because he's stuck in the past, but because he knows what works. Similarly, Jake "The Snake" Roberts, the master of wrestling psychology and a 2014 WWE Hall of Fame inductee, represents the thinking man's wrestler, someone who could make you believe he was the most dangerous man in the building without relying on flashy moves. Known for creating the DDT finisher and his cold, calculating promos, Roberts believes modern wrestling has lost its psychological edge. On his podcast, The Snake Pit with Diamond Dallas Page, launched in 2022, he's voiced frustration over wrestling becoming all spectacle and no substance. He's especially upset about how the DDT has been reduced to a transition move instead of the deadly finisher it once was, lamenting that today's wrestlers use it as a false finish that barely gets a reaction. In his eyes, what once looked like a career-ending strike is now wasted through overuse and lack of storytelling. In January 2023, Roberts also criticized how wrestlers constantly kick out of finishers, pointing out the irony of matches where multiple high-impact moves can't end the fight, yet a simple roll-up still seals the win. Jake "The Snake" Roberts believes the lack of logic in modern wrestling represents everything wrong with today's booking. He often questions why moves like Canadian Destroyers or 630 splashes fail to end matches, asking how fans are supposed to believe in the outcome when nothing feels credible anymore. To him, the logic is completely backward. Roberts especially dislikes the strong style approach with its stiff, realistic strikes made famous in Japanese wrestling, and in February 2023, he openly criticized the philosophy behind it. Since fans already know wrestling is scripted, he argues that causing real pain serves no purpose other than inflating egos, saying bluntly, "It's not tough, it's stupid." In July 2025, he also called apron bumps pretty stupid, questioning why wrestlers risk long-term injury just to get a brief reaction from the crowd. His views come from experience, having watched friends suffer permanent damage from unnecessary stunts meant to look impressive. What disturbs him most, however, is the complete erosion of kayfabe. In September 2025, through viral clips on Instagram and YouTube, Roberts accused today's wrestlers of not caring about protecting the business, saying they depend on flashy tricks instead of strong characters, and he singled out AEW performers for failing to maintain the illusion that once made wrestling believable. His philosophy of wrestling psychology was best captured in a 2011 PW Insider interview, where he explained, "Matches should mentally stimulate audiences through emotional connection, not just technical spots." To Roberts, modern wrestlers go through the motions, executing sequences without understanding the emotion or story those moves should convey. In a February 2023 post-wrestling appearance, he voiced his frustration that younger wrestlers ignore veteran advice, warning that in 10 years, nobody will remember them because they never did anything truly different or meaningful. Jake "The Snake" Roberts believes the lack of originality and unwillingness to learn from veterans has broken the generational knowledge transfer that kept professional wrestling strong for over a century. Still, he isn't entirely negative. He's praised psychology-driven wrestlers like Mick Foley for their storytelling depth, applauded John Cena's incredible longevity in March 2025, and even advocated for higher wrestler pay in February 2025. Roberts' influence on wrestling psychology is undeniable. He taught The Undertaker key mental techniques that helped shape the dead man's legendary persona. His criticism stems from deep understanding of what makes wrestling truly work: emotional manipulation, suspense, and creating moments that stay with audiences long after the match ends. To him, these vital skills are being lost. Kevin Nash, a WWE Hall of Famer inducted in 2015 individually and again in 2020 with the NWO, shares similar frustrations. Through his Click, this podcast, launched in 2022, Nash has become one of modern wrestling's loudest critics. Standing 6'10", he represents an era where size, charisma, and slow, deliberate pacing mattered more than constant high spots. His biggest complaint is that modern wrestling moves too fast. In December 2023, he called today's matches too fake, arguing that wrestlers rush through sequences without properly selling the impact of moves, leaving no time for fans to process what's happening. This lack of pacing, he says, kills emotional investment. In May 2025, Nash further complained that nobody truly sells any more wrestlers just react and instantly move on, turning what should be dramatic storytelling into a blur of empty. Kevin Nash explains that most modern wrestlers only register moves instead of truly selling them, meaning they simply acknowledge what happened to set up the next spot without showing real pain or progressing the story. He says that's the crucial difference between reacting to a move and selling its impact, a subtle but essential skill that separates good wrestlers from great ones. Nash especially criticizes multi-man matches, which he calls formulaic. In June 2025, he described their predictable structure. Two wrestlers go back and forth with big spots for a couple of minutes. Someone makes a dramatic save and oversells, then the next pair takes over to repeat the same pattern. He's also been vocal about WWE's production choices, complaining that the cameras often focus too much on the ring and miss compelling action happening on the floor. In July 2025, he singled out Raquel Rodriguez for working small despite her powerful build, expressing frustration that she shrinks herself while selling instead of standing tall and selling big. For someone like Nash, who used his 6'10" frame as a storytelling tool, seeing wrestlers fail to use their physical advantages feels like a missed opportunity. However, his sharpest criticism focuses on what he calls the disappearance of the grind. Nash argues that today's wrestlers are missing the essential lessons that came from performing hundreds of matches a year in different towns, lessons about connecting with live crowds, working through pain, and building the toughness that once defined the profession. He warns that the modern high-impact, fast-paced style, combined with fewer live reps, will prevent most current wrestlers from lasting decades like he and his peers did, because their bodies will simply break down long before reaching that point. Kevin Nash does acknowledge some positives about the current generation. He's praised Seth Rollins as a great worker, even while expressing concern over the physical toll Rollins' style takes on his body. He's also commended WWE's concussion protocols, noting that while they're necessary for safety, they also highlight how dangerous today's in-ring style has become. Overall, Nash's criticisms paint modern wrestling as too fast, too formulaic, and ultimately unsustainable for long careers. His views come from someone who thrived using a slower, more psychological style that allowed him to stay healthy and relevant for decades. Watching younger wrestlers sacrifice their bodies for quick crowd reactions, without mastering the fundamentals of pacing and storytelling, frustrates him deeply because he knows from experience that there's a smarter, more effective way to perform. He lived it. Rick the Nature Boy Flair, the 16-time world champion and 2-time WWE Hall of Famer inducted in 2008 individually and again in 2012 with the Four Horsemen, has also grown increasingly outspoken about his frustrations with modern wrestling through his podcast, To Be the Man with Conrad Thompson, which began in 2021. Flair's entire wrestling philosophy was shaped by the territorial era, built on 60-minute Broadway matches, unscripted promos, and the belief that every movement in the ring should have purpose and psychology. His criticism comes from watching those timeless fundamentals replaced with flashy stunts that lack substance. More than anything, Flair blames social media for the decline. In October 2023, he said platforms like Twitter have made wrestlers care more about fan opinions than veteran advice, arguing that this obsession creates entitlement and weakens the craft. As performers focus on online validation instead of improving their in-ring storytelling, Ric Flair's frustration with offering advice to younger wrestlers reached its breaking point between January 2023 and 24, when he admitted on To Be the Man that he had stopped mentoring because new talent listens to his advice, then immediately checks online fan opinions to decide if he's right. For Flair, a 16-time world champion with decades of experience, being ignored in favor of random internet commentary is disheartening. That's his reality, one where his wisdom is undervalued by people who've never stepped into a ring. His disdain for rehearsed matches is another sore point. In January 2025, he blasted the modern practice of pre-planned bouts, saying he'd never rehearsed in his career and that it's the one thing he can't stand about today's business. You can never guarantee crowd reactions. he explained, emphasizing that his philosophy was built on spontaneity, reading the crowd, calling matches on the fly, and adapting to what worked in the moment. Flair, known for his raw 20-minute promos that came straight from the heart, sees today's scripted lines as a betrayal of what once made wrestling magical. To him, this isn't about advanced techniques. It's about losing the basic fundamentals every wrestler should master long before reaching television. He's also deeply troubled by WWE's internal politics since Vince McMahon stepped away. By January 2024, Flair openly criticized the company's leadership, describing it as very political, with too many people trying to run things at once. While Vince had his flaws, Flair respected that under his leadership, everyone knew their place and the vision was clear. Now he feels the product suffers from a lack of unified direction. Still, despite his many frustrations, Flair balances his criticism with moments of genuine praise for today's standout performers. Goldberg celebrates the toughness and simplicity of the Attitude Era, while condemning what he sees as modern wrestling's softness both physically and mentally. The WWE Hall of Famer, inducted in 2018 and famed for his legendary 173 Nero WCW streak, has repeatedly argued that today's product lacks the grit, attitude, and straightforward storytelling that once defined the business. In January 2021, on WWE's After the Bell podcast, he agreed with The Undertaker's assessment that WWE had gone kind of soft, explaining that it's not just about physical toughness, but also about mental resilience, being able to take criticism without breaking down or lashing out. For Goldberg, the modern product's biggest flaw is its unnecessary complexity. Speaking with Essentially Sports in October 2023, he argued that current storylines and characters aren't better, they're just busier. He contrasted this with his own era, where simplicity was strength. Back then, all fans needed was a clear battle between good and evil. His own persona, an unstoppable force annihilating everyone in his path, connected with audiences, precisely because it didn't rely on elaborate backstories or layered motivations. Goldberg believes wrestling has lost sight of that primal intensity and emotional clarity, trading raw impact for overproduced spectacle and overthought narratives. In October 2023, Goldberg stated, "Modern wrestling has lost its way and become too scripted and predictable, lacking intensity and authenticity. It's all about spots now, not story." His comments captured a deep philosophical shift in the business from story-driven programming, where matches serve the narrative, to spot-driven programming, where the narrative merely exists to justify cool moves. Goldberg's frustration extends to social media obsession and celebrity influence, arguing that wrestling used to be about the ring, not likes and followers. For a performer whose entire mystique was built on dominance between the ropes brief, explosive matches defined by raw presence rather than lengthy promos, seeing wrestling reduced to a popularity contest feels like a betrayal of its essence. Ironically, Goldberg's criticism of dangerous wrestling carries extra weight given his history with Bret Hart, whose career-ending concussion came from a mistimed Goldberg kick in 1999. Yet that irony underscores his growth. His warnings now come from hard-earned experience and a desire to prevent others from repeating the same mistakes. Still, Goldberg balances his critiques with praise. He has lauded Drew McIntyre as a true locker room leader who climbed the ranks through grit and perseverance. And he proudly defends the spear, his own innovation, as one of wrestling's most replicated and enduring finishing moves, a testament to simplicity's power when executed with believable intensity. Goldberg's criticisms of modern wrestling's softness, overcomplication, and lack of raw, simple storytelling reflect the mindset of someone forged in mainstream wrestling's last truly dangerous no-nonsense era. Similarly, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the six-time WWF champion and 2009 WWE Hall of Famer, has voiced his own frustrations, focused specifically on WWE's increasing transparency and its impact on kayfabe. On April 30th, 2025, during the Ariel Helwani show, Austin openly criticized the company's habit of revealing too much behind-the-scenes content, warning that peeling back the curtain risks destroying the sense of immersion that made wrestling special. His concerns deepened after WWE announced its docuseries Unreal, which showcases writers' rooms and creative meetings. In follow-up coverage on May 5th, 2025, Austin bluntly said he wasn't interested in seeing that side of the business, insisting, "You've got to keep some mystique." For Austin, whose Attitude Era success relied on blurring the line between performer and persona, maintaining kayfabe wasn't just tradition, it was essential psychology. In December 2024, he recalled fining a wrestler $15,000 in the 90s for breaking character backstage, underscoring how seriously they protected the illusion. His criticism isn't nostalgia, it's a warning that overexposure erodes the magic. As he explained in May 2023, WWE's growing openness risks spoiling the very sense of danger, unpredictability, and mystique that once made fans truly believe. Even when they knew better, Austin's reflections on modern WWE balance criticism with pragmatism. Referencing the Attitude Era's guarded backstage culture, he explained, You don't want to give away all the secrets, stressing that mystery was a key part of wrestling's magic. Yet Austin isn't dismissive of change. He praises WWE for being on a roll creatively and financially, and commends talents like CM Punk for adapting to the modern landscape. He accepts that wrestling must evolve, but warns that evolution shouldn't come at the expense of mystique. Austin shows self-awareness about his own era's flaws, admitting injuries forced his brawling style and that not everything from the late 90s deserves revival. His criticism of WWE's growing transparency, especially through shows like Unreal, isn't rooted in nostalgia, but concern he believes revealing too much of the creative process risks eroding fans' suspension of disbelief, the very foundation of wrestling's storytelling power. To him, the danger lies in turning a once immersive art form into a fully exposed product, where audiences analyze rather than believe. As one of wrestling's most influential figures, Austin's warning carries weight. Trade mystique for modern openness, and the business might lose the magic that made it special. Hogan's criticism of modern wrestling physiques goes beyond vanity. It's about presence and believability. In June 2023, on the Full Send podcast, he bluntly stated that many modern wrestlers look like they should be bagging my groceries, contrasting them with his era's giants who looked larger than life and carried an aura of danger. The comment instantly went viral, sparking heated debates about body image and evolution in wrestling. While some saw Hogan's remarks as outdated or body-shaming, his underlying point was about spectacle wrestlers should look and feel special, like figures from another world. During the Hulkamania era, stars such as Andre the Giant, the Ultimate Warrior, and Hogan himself embodied that mythic presence, drawing fans through sheer visual impact. Hogan concedes modern athletes' agility, but questions the storytelling value of endless flips and near falls, arguing that constant spectacle without meaning dulls excitement. They do so much impressive stuff in one match that I wouldn't do in a year. What does it mean? Yet his critique isn't without irony. Many of his contemporaries achieved their size through steroids, leading to tragic health consequences. Fans on Reddit and other forums often highlight this contradiction, noting that while today's wrestlers may not resemble comic book heroes, they're healthier, more disciplined, and in many ways safer. Hogan's comments ultimately capture a generational divide between an era built on visual mystique and one built on athletic realism, raising a timeless question about what makes a wrestler truly larger than life. Hogan has softened with time, offering a more balanced perspective on modern wrestling. In May 2025, he praised AEW's women's division, particularly Toni Storm and Mariah May's match, calling it a testament to how far women's wrestling has evolved. He also appreciated that more wrestlers today earn good money and have opportunities across multiple promotions. Despite this, his main criticism remains unchanged. Wrestling has lost some of its magic when performers no longer look distinctly different from the fans watching them. With over 25 surgeries in the past decade and fewer public appearances, Hogan's tone has mellowed, but his belief stands firm. The debate he reignited about wrestler body types remains one of wrestling's most divisive topics. Modern wrestlers are arguably the most athletic and technically gifted generation ever, yet they lack the superhero-like aura that defined the giants of the 1980s and 1990s. Whether that matters depends on how one defines professional. Wrestling, should it be a pure athletic competition or a larger-than-life spectacle filled with extraordinary-looking heroes? Jim Ross, the legendary commentator and WWE Hall of Famer, inducted in 2007, has also entered this debate, using his Grillin' JR podcast with Conrad Thompson since 2019 to share his own criticisms and insights, often focusing on how commentary and storytelling have changed in modern wrestling. In July 2025, Jim Ross openly criticized modern broadcast teams for trying too hard to steal the spotlight instead of letting the in-ring action speak for itself. He emphasized the importance of silence, explaining that sometimes the most powerful commentary is none at all, a philosophy that defined his legendary career. Ross has always believed that great storytelling in wrestling commentary means knowing when to talk and when to let the moment breathe. In July 2023, he also called out announcers for lazy pronoun use, such as saying he instead of using names, labeling it bad broadcasting and recalling Vince McMahon drilling him with questions like, who's he? Who's she? Who's them? To stress clarity. For Ross, clear communication keeps viewers engaged and prevents confusion. However, his criticisms don't stop at commentary. In November 2024, he blasted modern wrestlers for poor selling, saying they simply register what's happening and then move on without showing real impact. He tied this to bad habits that weaken match believability. Ross also sided with Bret Hart in August 2025, calling chops overused and meaningless, arguing they cause unnecessary pain without advancing stories, noting nobody ever won a match with a chop. To Ross, these issues reflect a larger problem wrestling, focusing on flashy moments instead of logical storytelling, where small details once made the difference between good and great performances. Jim Ross also voiced strong opinions about modern event structures, arguing in September 2023 that wrestling should return to fewer quarterly pay-per-views to rebuild anticipation and long-term storytelling, since monthly events dilute excitement and weaken emotional investment. By July 2025, he doubled down, saying 3-hour pay-per-views are ideal because excessively long shows gamble with fans' attention spans. Despite his sharp critiques, Ross offered praise where he felt it was due, defending AEW's Death Riders faction in 2025, calling Jon Moxley's group a well-executed gimmick. He admired their dedication and work ethic, even if their violent style wasn't his personal taste. Ross's criticisms about commentary excess, lazy selling, and formulaic storytelling come from decades of experience as the voice behind wrestling's most iconic moments, Austin 3:16, Mankind's Hell in a Cell Fall, and countless others, and stem from his desire to preserve wrestling's art form rather than bury it. When Jim Ross speaks about what's wrong with the business, it's worth paying attention. Eric Bischoff, the WWE Hall of Famer inducted in 2021 and former WCW president, shares that brutally honest spirit, but takes it even further, emerging as one of modern wrestling's most relentless critics, especially toward AEW. Through his podcasts, 83 Weeks since 2018 and Strictly Business since 2023, Bischoff has repeatedly declared AEW dead on arrival. In December 2024, during an appearance on the Ariel Helwani show, he called AEW a disappointment and embarrassment, later writing on X that it went from being an exciting new opportunity to a disgrace to the entire genre. Bischoff's criticism is scathing and all-encompassing. He argues AEW has no structure, no long-term direction, and no willingness to learn. He singles out Tony Khan as the core problem, calling him clueless and insisting AEW will never evolve. As long as Khan prioritizes validation as a booker, instead of being smart enough to hire someone who truly understands the business, Dave. Meltzer often finds himself in Eric Bischoff's crosshairs, with Bischoff repeatedly accusing him of being delusional and blindly loyal to AEW. In September 2025, Bischoff mocked Meltzer, saying, "Dave is emotionally invested, and his dirt sheet wet dream is circling the toilet bowl." His disdain extends to modern wrestling factions as well. Bischoff argues that groups like AEW's Blackpool Combat Club and even WWE's Bloodline are uninspired, pale imitations of the NWO that lack authenticity and edge. He insists that the NWO worked because the WCW-WWF rivalry was real, not scripted,